Hello and welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I'm the actor.
And I'm Josh Knapp. I'm the broadcast engineer.
Here we go, Josh. I'm still not used to this video thing. I got my pens up, I got my hands, and it starts counting down. I'm like, oh,
it's happening.
Professional.
Well, yeah, our thing does a countdown. So it makes it seem like a lot more real than it really is. Like we were just talking right before this. We'll talk right after this. But for some reason, this feels different.
It does. It always does. As soon as you press play or record, everything's in your ear and you hear everything that you're not supposed to hear. It's
well,
a
that's
weird thing.
because you're a performer. So that's why.
Yeah, don't even get me started. Don't even get me started. Sometimes I wonder, my friend. Sometimes I wonder.
So today we're going to talk about two different movies, both like pretty big movies as far as stars that are in them. And we're going to start off with Babylon, which you said before the podcast so we can get it out of the way. And I think that's blasphemy and you should take that out of your mouth.
Gosh, did you just out me as a critic? Hey, actually, you know what? Let's take a split second. Give me a second to indulge myself here. I want to take a second because the Oscar nominations came out. We could talk about that in the future.
Yeah.
We don't have to talk about this right now. When you just said what I said back to me on the podcast, it made me realize something. I owe Austin Butler an apology. And here's why. It's not because I said he wasn't going to get nominated. I was totally wrong. It was how dismissive I was towards him in that movie. And I listened to it and I thought about it and I thought, that's terrible. Like, we're supposed to be going at the positive first. And I was like, and you were like, well, is he going to get nominated? I was like, no. How's the movie? Not good. And I was so dismissive. And then I saw your perspective is completely different when you're doing something in the public's eye. And I'm getting ready to do a play. So of course I'm wigging out a little bit. And so it puts your sensory overload in a different position. Anyway, I saw an interview with him and he was talking about learning how Elvis laughed. And for 2 years, he prepared for that role. And he was walking down an Australian beach trying to imitate Elvis's laugh. And he thought to himself, he must look crazy to the surfers because, you know, he's and he's trying to get it down. And it dawned on me how dismissive I was towards him and how much work it must have taken for him to get there. And he got there and now he's being celebrated. And so it was wrong of me to be that dismissive. And it has bothered me for the 2 months since we've talked about that movie. So thank you for indulging me and imitating something I said so I could realize that, you know, yeah, it was if I didn't like the performance, that would be one thing. If I was vocal and critical and had some visceral response to why I didn't like it, that's one thing. That's another thing. But to be so like, that
I think
me.
you can start to conflate different things, like, you know, an actor's performance as a character with how good you felt the movie was versus how good the cinematography was versus, wow, the score was really great. And in a lot of ways, I think you can kind of like just say like, because of this one aspect, you know, the whole thing is just needs to be thrown away, just like forgotten about or whatever. And I think I think we do a pretty good job of picking out things that we really do value or that were really hit us and were like lit us up, even if it was in a movie that either one of us wasn't like fully on board. So I'd give yourself a little bit of a pass, but yeah. I mean,
well, thank you, but no. When I listened to it, I was like, that's terrible. And I don't want to be that person. I have no idea what it took him to get there. And I have no idea the preparation and the time. I mean, I'm spending 6 weeks on a play and I'm losing my mind. I can't imagine 2 years, Baz Luhrmann, Tom Hanks, you know, starring role. I can't imagine it. And so to be so, I can't think of a better word, dismissive is wrong. So,
yeah. So what's your problem with Babylon?
Okay, first of all, I never said I had a problem with Babylon. I just want to talk about Top Gun. And if that means talking about Babylon first, then we can get to Top Gun, then I'm fine because I have kneeled at the altar of Top Gun and I am worshiping. I am in the church of the Top Gun Maverick. And so it's got nothing to do with Babylon. Here's what I'll say about Babylon. It's been a long time since I've seen it. I saw it on Christmas Day, so that tells you how long ago it was. And I don't know if it works, and I don't know what he was going for, but I was intrigued and enthralled the whole entire time. I have thought about it many times after. I have some questions and I have some thoughts, but no, I don't have a problem with it. I just don't think it's the film. I'm not sure. For me, I'm not sure it's the film Damien Chazelle wanted to make. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe what he put together wasn't what rang true to me, didn't sing to me. But I'm telling you, I was like this the whole time I was watching it. And it was Christmas Day. It's the worst movie in the world to see on Christmas Day.
It is.
It's not the greatest movie to see on Christmas Day. That said, there's some exquisite cinematography. The score is beautiful. The direction has its moments, more so than not. The performances are outstanding. So I don't have a problem with it. I just don't fully understand what he wanted from us as audience members, what we were supposed to extract.
I feel like for some reason I feel more like that on First Man than I do on this movie. I feel like he kind of got everything that he wanted and did it the way that he wanted to do it, whether it's, shooting on film versus shooting digitally, or whether it's, just like some of the huge sets that he dealt with and sets of sets. And, cause you have to manage all of that too. You're shooting something that's shooting something. And we get into, this whole like weird Russian doll thing that he has to figure out. But I think that it seems like there weren't very many things that he got pushed back on, and he pretty much got his own, run of the train set. And I just don't know that. I can understand why people might look at that and be like, what is he even trying to say? And I don't know, like the end of the movie, which I'm not going to spoil, but the end of the movie kind of like drove that home for me, as just kind of like, he's just a really big fan of movies, and he just wants people to feel excited about film. And I don't know if he necessarily was able to package that in a way that's easily consumable, and it kind of goes all over the place. And we start following different people, and Brad Pitt's in this movie, and he's kind of a main character, but not a main character. He's very tangential for most of the movie. There's characters, the Lady Fei character played by Lee Jun Lee, who's like in and out and in and out, and so these are interesting characters, and they're complex characters, I think, to a certain extent. But the movie, even though it's 3 hours long, it has a lot going on in it, and it seems like it takes a lot of turns that they're asking a lot of the audience. But I think Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie, and then Diego Calva, who plays Manny, this is his first huge movie. I mean, he's been in Narcos and stuff, but I think he did a really good job. And I will bring up one actress that just once I dug into it, I was just like, I can't believe this. The director, Ruth, the director, played by Olivia Hamilton. She gave me those vibes, those like she was built to be in this movie. But then once I started reading back about it, she is Damien Chazelle's wife. She's a producer on the movie. She's integral in his last two movies. She was in, she played Ed White's wife in First Man, and she had a small part in La La Land. I mean, she's not just the actor in this movie playing the director in the movie, one of the directors in the movie, but she's integral to the making of this film. And I think that on top of all that other stuff that she did, she was so believable as that particular character. And it was interesting to make that character, that director character, a woman, first of all. And secondly, it didn't feel anachronistic. It didn't feel like it didn't fit within that time. It felt like, she has complete run over this and over this all of these sets, and she's dealing with all the problems that had to happen, and she's, going back and forth. It was a great performance, and it was one that I think might get lost within other performances or bigger names. And I was super impressed with her, and it was just. Did you notice her at all, or did you get any kind of that?
Oh yeah, I didn't know who she was, but
Me
good
either.
job sucking up to the director's wife there, bud.
No.
It's like,
Seriously,
well,
though.
I'm super nice to Steph.
I didn't know. I did not know.
Yeah, I didn't either.
That but she was so believable, and her and PJ Byrne, the guy who plays the assistant director, who's hilarious in that set. The first talkie that Margot Robbie is in.
Yeah.
So great. Like all of that. And of course he was in Wolf of Wall Street. He's been in a bunch of other things, but there's so many like little vignettes that you can like pull out of the movie and just play that for like 7 minutes. And it's just super satisfying. The scene of them like with all the sets in the round at the very beginning, the Kinescope studio where they have like
that.
5-6 different sets. And the cool part is they don't explain it to you necessarily, but the reason why they could even do that is because they didn't run sync sound. So they had sound over. They did the sound later, or they were silent and they just had music or whatever. So like you could do whatever you want and make as much noise as you want, just as long as it's not within the frame of the film. Nobody would ever know that if you turn the camera, 20 degrees to the right, it's a totally different set. It's a Western set, and then it's a Far Eastern set or whatever. I don't know what they would have called it back then, but it's some totally different thing. So it's just I don't know, that it's the weird, crazy technology and technical limitations that they had to deal with were just kind of insane. I'm also going to bring up Spike Jonze because he was awesome. There's a lot of those like, wait, that's Spike Jonze. Or, like you start getting in there and you're just like, oh, wait a second. Hold on. I know that person. And then they, Olivia Wilde was even like I'm like, well, hold on. I know that's Olivia Wilde. Did you see Elizabeth Olsen?
No.
She was, when he gets laughed at, when Brad Pitt's character Jack gets laughed at in the movie. Yeah. And he says like, I can't remember what it was. He's like forever and ever and ever. But when he says that same thing, and he repeats it over and over and over, it's like, I love you, I love you, I love you. Like that's what he says. And he's saying that to Elizabeth Olsen, even though she like doesn't have any lines or really anything. So I guess she just was like showed up for a day or whatever. It's all that little stuff that just, I love kind of picking that out. But yeah, I had a lot of fun.
Not? Yeah, I mean, it's not fun. It's just so much. That's true. It's just a lot. And I love the visual metaphor of the studio inside the studio inside the studio. And I love the idea that you were just talking about with different sound stages could be right next to each other, or different sets could be right next to each other, because that is a visual metaphor for Hollywood just being a machine and pumping out film after film after film, because it was about money and industry, volume and entertainment. It wasn't about art per se. It wasn't about anything that we've come to know Hollywood to be. I mean, it was there in some films, but that's really an aspect that came later on, or in abundance came later on. Let's go back to the idea of the Russian doll thing that you said. That intrigued me when you said that, because you ever seen those videos of somebody opening a big box at Christmas time, speaking of Christmas time again, and then there's a smaller box inside, and then a smaller box inside, and after about 4 or 5 boxes, you're like, this better be a puppy or a new phone, because it better not be like a carrot or some cucumber or socks, right, or underwear. It better be something big. And I found that intriguing when you use that comparison, because inside the box, inside the studio, inside the sound box, inside the cameraman, inside the director, inside the booth, something tragic happens.
Yeah.
And as an audience member, and you have to give Damien Chazelle credit, because he allows you to know on some instinctual level, this is not going to end well. It's not. And then on some other instinctual level, you're hoping to yourself, not that you're hoping a tragedy happens, but you're hoping he goes there, because that's exactly where he needs to go. And that's exactly what they need to do. And when that door opens, what's going to happen. You just do. And if it didn't happen, I would have been disappointed. Not that I'm happy that a tragedy happened. I'm saying that as a film goer and an experience. Let me make this real quick point. That said, if you go back all the way to the beginning of the film with the elephant, Damien Chazelle tells you exactly what movie you're in for. He tells you this is what's going to happen to you, so be prepared.
Yep.
And
walk out now.
Yeah, well, yeah. And pushing an elephant up a hill is from an REM song. I'm not saying he took it from an REM song. It's from a song they wrote for Man on the Moon, which is an REM song. And, there was a little bit of a small uproar that they weren't nominated for the Oscar and Golden Globe, blah, 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 blah. But when I saw that, I was like, I'm wondering, is Damien Chazelle that far into Hollywood that that's a reference to that? Or is this a reference to something else? Because as soon as I saw it, I was like, something's ringing to me. Something's reminding me of something. And then I started hearing the lyric in my head. And I thought, if anybody, it would be this guy who would put this reference in only for somebody like me to know about it, or for a small group of people to know about it. That's besides the point. The point of that opening sequence is to let you know, be careful what you wish for, because when you get it, an elephant is going to do what an elephant does, and
all over you.
Don't stand behind it. As soon as the camera went, I was like, oh no. And then once again, just like opening that door to that sound booth and seeing that tragedy, if he didn't go there, if the elephant didn't do everything an elephant does, I might have been a little disappointed, because why not? Why not push? And I've said this a million times, bold choices always win with me. They just do. And he makes them and he sticks to them. And this is the movie that we got.
Well, and I think that people don't really, nobody really talks very much about pre-Hays Code Hollywood. And Hays Code started in like 1934. So, that right there is like, there's very strict rules of what you can and cannot show on screen as of 1934. And that went all the way to 1968. So, and we know what happened after 1968. We get, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. We get Bonnie and Clyde. We get all of these movies that are kind of like pushing the envelope. Taxi Driver, all of these things, in the late 60s, early 70s, that are kind of pushing that envelope and getting more risque. And then we have, essentially what we have today, where we've got ratings and all that stuff. But really between 34 and 68, you couldn't do a lot of this stuff. And it wasn't even that necessarily it was things that were happening on screen. It was also like behind the scenes, like there was just, he was trying to, and it seems like Chazelle did a lot of research where he's like, whatever I'm showing you here, you can imagine that something similar to this probably happened, because, and there's stories and lore and all that stuff associated with it. But it's just a different time. And really, like, nobody was watching them. They were out in the middle of the desert, essentially. And there's no regulation whatsoever. It's just whatever wins the day, whatever people feel like, other people want to see. I watched this twice actually at Alamo, and they showed all kinds of like, pre-code clips from movies and stuff. One of them had Douglas Fairbanks, and he played this guy who was just like constantly high on opium and cocaine and just like dancing around, and like, it was just. And this was just a regular movie, it wasn't like anything that was super salacious or anything, but that was just like one of the movies. So it's just a different world that we don't really see very much, or it doesn't get referenced very much. So, it's interesting. And then you layer on top of that, the parallels of, how, Singing in the Rain looks back on this transitionary time, and how this movie looks back on the transitionary time, and then the folding in of Singing in the Rain, the song earlier in the movie, and then there's a scene incorporating Singing in the Rain later on. It seems a bit on the nose, I would say, but I can see why why those two scenes were in there. There's a scene of the main character Manny watching Singing in the Rain. There's also a scene of the main character Manny watching the jazz singer. The jazz singer was obviously a big deal, being the first like popular talkie at the time. But then, Singing in the Rain kind of like analyzes that from that at that particular time. So it would be interesting for it was interesting to see a character who lived through that, seeing that reflected back on himself. And then especially after he, the things that happened in his life, seeing him react to that. So yeah, it was, I don't know. It was cool. I'm being somewhat vague, and I'm not really spoiling anything, but
yeah, it'll be kind of hard to also. Yeah. I mean, you could talk about everything that happens at the beginning of the movie that we were just talking about. You could actually describe it. Until you see it, you don't know. You just don't know. Yeah. And you actually made an interesting point that, or you were talking about something that made me think of a point of mine. You were talking about on the nose. It was on the nose. Yeah, sure. Sometimes that's okay though, because that's, I mean, I was listening to your talk or your when you were talking about Triangle Sadness, because I just watched that, and you were talking about the obvious choices that he made, and I thought that's the first thing that I was going to compliment it on, because the square was so what, like I needed help with understanding, and we talked about going and seeing art history or learning art history and being told this is why this is an important painting and so forth and so on. And with Triangle Sadness, he definitely does things that are completely on the nose, but I think he does it on purpose. I think he needs to make a point. He wants to make a point, and he's making a point, whether or not you know the references or not, which you made. You talked about knowing the references that Woody Harrelson and the Russian drunk guy, and that's your description, not mine.
I can't remember the character's name.
Yeah, he was great though. He's great.
No, he was good.
So great. He has such a great scene. He's so great at the end of that film. Anyway, that whole last sequence, that whole third act is amazing. Anyway, I dug it. I dug that movie. I really dug it. Anyway, so I think that maybe that's why Babylon is not higher on my list of lit up movies this year, because it is stuff we've seen before, stuff that we've learned about Hollywood before. And that's not a bad thing. They're going to be making Stars Born for the rest of our existence as humans, and that's a great story, and people should. And look what Bradley Cooper was able to do. So be it. I'm just wondering how much he could have reinterpreted things so it felt fresher, or maybe he just didn't care because he wanted to get this story and this idea out. But speaking of A Star is Born, it's sort of that story, if you will, on some level. But aren't all Hollywood films kind of about the underdog who wants to be the star, who becomes the star, and then becomes whatever, and then lives happily ever after with a wife and whatever? I mean, that's sort of how they all work. And the ending was not my favorite part of the movie, as a matter of fact. As a matter of fact, I thought the ending was a little too on the nose, but how else do you end it? I think after you spend 2.5 hours of the elephant, Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie, everything that happens to everybody, Tobey Maguire scene, which I just don't understand that at all.
It just falls off the cliff at that point. It's like, nope, you thought it was bad. It's worse.
It's way worse. And I was like, no.
That's what happens when you sniff ether. Just so kids out there, don't sniff ether.
Yeah, with that kind of dark circle and the bloodshot. Yeah, yikes. Scary. But the moral of the story is it comes with this kind of Schindler's List ending of the movie that almost tonally throws the whole film off for me. I would have rather it been 2.5 hours of excess and then end, and you've been like, but it doesn't. It ties it up nicely. And in a way, I also appreciate that, because if it was 2 hours and 45 minutes of and it didn't have a bow, I would be mad. I'd be like, look what you did to me on Christmas Day. What are you thinking? But it does have a happily ever after ending. But that's Hollywood. So you have to appreciate it on some level. And it's smart and it's sophisticated and it's well done. Not a movie I want to enjoy over and over and over again.
For me, I'm that way too, but I will watch that little 7-minute sound set scene, where it starts getting crazy and they start, action, and then somebody opens the door and everybody's like, who is it? I mean, all that whole scene, because it gets more and more and more stressful. It just keeps building. And the score behind, which we haven't even talked about the score, which is amazing. I mean, it is nominated, but it should definitely be high in the running. Jordan Hurwitz, or no, what was it? Justin Hurwitz score for Babylon. Just amazing. Awesome.
Haunting.
So And he's able to go back and forth between these like, you know, party scenes and then, you know, these like scenes that really kind of wind you up and build that stress. So I thought his contribution was amazing. They also incorporated, you know, different songs like that Night on Bald Mountain for the big fight scene that Spike Jonze is directing, and he's like, Mark Schnell, you know, he's really getting into it. But that's the other thing, is that this movie allowed Damien Chazelle to essentially like make his epic, you know, make his silent movie epic, to make his all of these different things. He kind of like was able to go to camp, go to pre-Hays Code filmmaking camp and do all of these things, because he did shoot all that stuff. He shot people shooting it, but that's kind of part of it, where it's just kind of like, I'm sure he was really excited about like finding the cameras that they would have used at that time, and you know, figuring out all of these different elements and just getting the shot, like the shot with Brad Pitt and, you know, walking up to the woman at the end of the day with the perfect lighting and all of that stuff. He shot that. I mean, he shot it on film and he did the whole thing. Like, and I'm sure that, you know, whenever they got the shot and he said cut, everybody cheered just like they did in the movie, because that's what they're going for. The other thing I will bring up is the cinematography, and it was Linus Sandgren, and, you know, like I said, they shot on film, all that stuff, but they did a lot of things. I don't know if you noticed, the one thing that stood out to me the most is that in a lot of the outdoor scenes, the sky is just completely blown out. Like none of the sky is blue or anything like that. It's just completely white. And it gives you this kind of, it does give you a very filmic feel. It makes it feel like it's not real. Like it's not something that you would just like walk outside and see if you were right outside of Los Angeles, you know, just walked out on an almond farm or something, and you'd see a bunch of almond trees. You would not see that. It just feels, it feels like, you know, we've talked about, you know, 70s movies or whatever, you know, like they just have this like grittiness to them, whether it's the film stock that they used or the lighting styles that were prevalent at the time. This feels like it's not of this time. Whereas, you know, a movie that's shot on digital, like with current LED lighting and all this stuff, like it would feel a little bit different, and it could feel, based on some lighting choices and colorization, color correction choices, could feel more clinical. And they were definitely going for a more stylized thing by shooting on film and by overexposing during those scenes. So by doing that, the cinematographer is doing something that he can't get back. Like he can't correct for that. Nowadays, you got these digital cameras, and if you accidentally overexpose or underexpose, you can correct for it digitally in post-production. You can't do that with the way that they shot this movie. Like it is what it is. And you're limiting yourself in certain ways, but at the same time, you're getting an image that you're not going to be able to get in that same way using digital cameras. And so all that's purposeful and like I said, could be considered limiting, but it also is very stylized. And so, I mean, it worked on me. It made me feel like I was watching something that wasn't shot a year and a half ago or whatever. So, yeah.
Well, it's got the nominations it should have gotten. Score, production design, and costume design. And it could possibly win all three of those awards. Score-wise,
oh man,
it's stunning. Yeah.
Yeah.
He creates his own world at the same time. He stays in the parameters of the world that he's working in. I mean, it sticks out as its own character. And that's unusual for me to actually hear it and be allowed to be on the raft of the water of the score, to let me float down the river. That usually doesn't happen to me unless it's bad. And I'm like, what is that? Stop that. What is that? When it's good, it just goes with it. This sticks out in a beautiful way. So he could win. It's very possible. It's very possible. And production design, you can't touch it. And also, costume design wise, the Academy loves that kind of stuff. So, I mean, and she sticks, or actually, I don't even know who the costume designer is. Now they say,
not sure.
I just had it up too. Damn it.
Production designer, I know, is a woman. I'm not sure about the costume designer.
Well, there's two production designers listed.
Oh yeah.
Valencia Martin and Anthony Carlino, and then Justin Hurwitz for
Yeah,
score. And
Florencia
then
Martin is the production designer. Yeah.
Florencia. What a
Mary
great-
Zofres, yeah,
Yeah.
she's done a lot. Yeah, in fact, I think she did La La Land. She did The Tragedy of Macbeth, Ballad of Buster Scruggs, Hail
Nice.
Caesar, Interstellar. Yeah, so she
True
works.
Grit.
Yeah, she works with the Coen brothers. She works with Christopher Nolan. So
Nice. Yeah. So I shouldn't have assumed it was a female. I just did. But staying in the style of the era, but also giving it her own little flair,
Yeah.
for lack of a better term. So yeah. So anyway, we're half an hour into it.
No,
and
I-
we usually do a podcast that's about an hour long.
I'm good.
And I'm sitting here waiting.
I don't have anything else to say. So I think we're. Oh,
So-
I did want to bring up Giovanna Depo plays the jazz trumpet player. So he did a very good job of accurately portraying
Oh, yeah,
playing
he's great.
music on film, which is very difficult, especially if you're not like a professional musician. So yeah. Great.
And I'm sorry, at the end of the segment of Babylon, this is where you apologized to me for thinking I was going to bag on this movie, and I didn't say a bad word about it.
No,
I'm just saying.
Very true. Very true. Now we get to go to a movie that I've seen
Yay!
probably about 6 times. So
Wow.
yeah. Well, I
Okay,
mean, I own it. I can watch it at any time. So
I'm 5 times jealous because I've only seen it once so far.
oh wow. Okay.
Listen,
So
I started the podcast with an apology, and I have to continue with the apologies for the night. I once again did that thing like Blade Runner 2049, where I was like, really? Do we need another Blade Runner? Do we? And yes, we did. And it became one of my favorite movies of the year, and I had to shut up. Now, luckily, I don't say those things out loud, even though I'm admitting to it right now. And I thought to myself, do we really need a Top Gun Maverick 30 years later? How is this going to work? Do we really need to take the first movie and redo it 30 years from now? Do we really need it? And the answer is yes. Yes, we do. I cannot say enough about this movie. There is something about great American films that just stand above, pun intended, high above the rest of the film world. They just do. And we have a tendency to, and I'm sure there's a lot of international people involved in this film. I'm not bagging on international film. I'm saying that the epic blockbuster film is an American thing. And when we do it well, we do it like this. It is the best popcorn movie I've seen in forever. I'm trying not to be so hyperbolic, by the way. I'm trying, but I could go off on how much I love this film. I cannot say enough about how much I loved it. There's not one aspect. There is one little tonal thing that happens, but I forgive it. For me, it was like, no, wait, stop. But it's a blip.
there's one line for me that I was like,
Oh, is it? Oh,
yeah.
really?
But,
Okay,
but
well, you're
other
gonna have
than
to
that,
tell me.
I'm on board with you so far. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't. I'm happy that it was nominated for everything that it was. I wish that the director was nominated. I wish Tom Cruise was nominated. It's a tough year for all of those things.
Yeah.
I just saw Women Talking, so I wish Sarah Polley was nominated too. She does a really amazing job with that movie, and that movie is daunting, and she carries you through it. So there's a lot of I wishes. I can't really argue with anybody that's been nominated. Everybody this year it's a good list all the way down the line.
I think so.
I mean, but this movie is
I
it's
think
great.
yeah. So I think that this movie, you're right. I said the same thing. Top Gun is one of my favorite movies of all time. I think that probably is the movie that I've seen the most in my life. Top Gun. Just because I saw it so much when I was a kid. That was like one of the only VHS tapes we had. And so I would just keep watching it over and over and over again. And yeah. I would just rewind, just keep going. So yeah, I mean, I'm I have intimate knowledge of Top Gun, of a lady this time. So that was a reference to the first Top Gun, but I think that this movie, first of all, I agreed with you, and I was thinking like, we don't need another Top Gun. Why would you besmirch the reputation of a movie like Top Gun? And it's so far in the future, and I think that they figured out a way to a lot of the success of this movie is in spite of itself and in spite of the concept of what they were talking about. It's like, it seems to me like there's only potential for failure in doing this. There's only potential for failure in bringing back Goose, or in bringing up Goose's son. There's only potential for failure in essentially remaking the movie. There's only potential for failure in being formulaic with the way that you go about making this action movie. And they succeed in spite of all of those hurdles. And they're able to make it work, and they're able to make it feel like when you're watching the movie, it doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel trite. It doesn't feel like it's trying to take advantage of the audience. So yeah,
there is, and I think Joseph Kosinski, is that how you say his name?
That's the
Kosinski.
director.
I think he purposely opens the movie the way that he opens it just to make you go, "Oh no, it's my worst nightmare."
It's the same
what are
shots,
they doing?
the same music,
everything. But is it the same? It's a different band doing the song, right?
No, it's the same exact song. Yeah, it's the Harold Faltermeyer, and it goes into Danger Zone.
Right.
It's the same exact thing.
Okay.
Exactly the same.
Okay. Same bands, everything.
Yes. Yeah. The two songs are the
Danger
same.
Zone is not a different band doing it?
Okay, so the first half before the planes take off is Harold Faltermeyer's song. I don't know what the song's called, but it's just that he wrote the song, and he does all the synth stuff for the first Top Gun movie. And that exact same piece is that. And then when the planes start taking off, it's Kenny Loggins' Danger Zone.
Well, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, so at first you're like, oh, no. And then all of a sudden you realize, no, he's paying homage to that, and he has to. He has to.
Yeah.
He has to remind us why we're invested in this world, why this world has lasted for 30 years. He has to remind us. And then from that point on, he owns everything. The screenwriter owns everything. I thought they were going to try to make Tom Cruise the ageless wonder that he is, and they were going to try to make him invincible, but they don't. They own everything about what did happen, according to what we learn in this screenplay about this character.
Yep.
They own it. He is the aged out. They own the fact that he's still the rank that he is. They own the fact that they're going to cast somebody who's perfect as Goose's son. If you had told me, I was like, there's no way. And all they did was they gave him the right mustache
and the right
color hair.
Yep.
And the right color hair.
Oh, okay.
It's a blondish brown, because she's
true.
Blonde and he's,
that's true.
light brown.
Meg Ryan's definitely blonde. Yeah.
Yes. Perfect. And how do you get that in there? Photographs. How do you remind people? Little lines in the movie. How do you go about doing this? What are the stakes? What are the stakes for bringing Goose's son in and then calling him Rooster? I mean, come on. If you had wrote it and let me read it, I would have been like, don't do this. But because there's so much integrity and so much charisma behind everybody commits to it 100%, that you're like, okay, that's definitely Goose's son.
Yeah.
It's perfect. They even call out his scars on his face. Miles Teller has some kind of scarring on his face from something. I think a car accident. I can't remember. They call it out. And then you worry because you think, well, Kelly McGillis, right? Is that her last name?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Where is she? And then you think, oh, well, that's not good that they couldn't get her, or they didn't want her, or they didn't write her in, whatever. But would he have been with her for 30 years so they lived happily ever after that? They were not supposed to be together to begin with. First of all, she's older than him, and he's going somewhere. She's going to stay solid.
She's also in the Navy. Like, she's part of, like, right. Well, she's not in, I mean, she's plugged into the Navy as an external contractor, and she's got a place, like you said. But just the name Maverick and the way that his attitude towards, naval aviation, and his attitude towards, being against, pretty much anybody overseeing him and anybody telling him what to do. There was no way he was ever going to be a successful Top Gun instructor. That's why the line in there is like, oh, I lasted 2 months,
Right. Perfect. But let me finish this last point, and then I'll try to not overtalk you again, because this movie lit me up, dude. Then what do? You introduce another ex-girlfriend.
Who was referenced in the first movie.
Oh, right. So brilliant.
Yeah.
That's freaking brilliant.
And it's Jennifer Connelly. So come on.
What is it with her? What is it with her? There's something. I don't know. 200 years from now, people see her, they'll probably start a religion because
I'm going to make you like her even more. She actually sailed that sailboat.
I believe it.
She did. I mean, because I looked at it when we watched it in the theater. I talked to Steph afterwards. I was like, I don't see how they could have, they must have used millions of dollars of CGI to try to make it look like she was actually piloting that sailboat. No, she just did it because she knows how to sail. So there you go.
Well, the thing that's great about that scene, and I know we're bouncing all around here, but who cares? That's the reason why you have a podcast, right? So anybody who thinks you're bouncing around, get your own. Anyway, so that scene's brilliant because how do you put him on her level and vice versa? How do you do it? You put him in literally a fish out of water scenario.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
And then you show him that he's not perfect in every scenario. He can't just jump across a rooftop without breaking his leg, which he actually did in real life. He can't just climb on the side of a 757 or whatever he climbed on the side of and with a little harness. He can't just hang on the side of a building with just suction cups, which he did. You have to show Maverick in a vulnerable situation. And then what do they do on top of that? They make it about her saying, hey, don't make this about me. I'm not here to solve your problems. I have enough. I have a kid. I have a life. I have a business. I like my life, which is unusual for a character in a movie. Usually people are at her age not liking life, but she actually is. And she's like, I don't need your complication.
Yeah, let's not do this again. Yeah.
I'm not doing it. We're not doing it. I don't need it. You don't need me, blah, blah, blah. Although that scene, when she sees him through the bar window in the very beginning of the film, I was like, am I going to cry at Top Gun Maverick? And
30 minutes into the movie?
Yes, I did. And I continue to cry throughout the movie. As a matter of fact, it's a joke with my brother and myself now. We went out to lunch and we were talking about it, and something came up. And I started to cry and I go, oh, Top Gun Maverick, Top Gun Maverick. So it's become a joke. So I don't know.
It's those little choices, like you said, where, okay, he does play Great Balls of Fire, but we don't hear, they drop out the sound. You still see everybody enjoying it inside. He's on the outside. He's already been in that whole scene. He's already been kind of taken down a bit. And really, it's the exact same scene as the bar scene in the first Top Gun, where, he's looking at Charlie and he's, coming on to her and all that. It's that whole, everybody, you get to know all the characters, but then you don't really know the relationships between the characters. You don't know relationships between, Hangman and Tom Cruise. Hangman literally picks up Tom Cruise and throws him out. And then of course there's the next scene, which is Tom Cruise becoming their trainer. So it's the same thing with the Charlie scene. It's all the same. But one thing I did want to bring up about that whole scene where he puts his phone on the bar and she rings the bell and he has to do a round for everybody. And then he gives her his card to cash out. Do you think that his card was actually declined? Because I have a theory that she just did that to kind of get back at him, to tell him his card was declined, from just because, to kind of get back at him and make him feel even more uncomfortable, and also potentially to get him to come back the next day.
Well, he's not rich, and
that's
people do have limits. And if we're talking about $6 or $7 for a beer in a bar, and there's 150 people in that bar, I mean,
he's not rich, but he does happen to have a P-51 Mustang and a hangar that he's restoring. That's got to be I don't know, $1 million or something.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But other than that,
movie,
I know.
Excused.
She also has a $150,000 Porsche that she just parks right outside of her house. So, I mean, that
could have been willed to her.
Okay.
That could have been something she refurbished or had refurbished.
And her dad was an admiral, so maybe I'm sure he was doing okay. So, but
no, I don't know. I was wondering about that. I thought that was just to show you that he was. They do a really great job at
Yeah.
showing how humbled he has been in his life. He's
Yeah.
humbled. He lives in a airplane hangar, but he doesn't. He lives in one of those little cool mobile home silver things
Within
that
the
yeah, would only look really cool in movies, by the
like
way.
an
You ever seen
Airstream.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you ever seen one in real life? It's scary. The walls rattle, things. You ever been in one when it rains?
No.
It's torture. Yeah,
Okay.
it is not Brad Pitt in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It is not. Well, so no, but that's interesting because I think the movie has such depth that if that is the truth, what you're saying, then it is probably there. I didn't think about it that way. I thought she was just like one more thing. It got declined. But he also acts like it's not a surprise that it got declined. So he could have like a $10,000 limit and he could be maxed out. So
maybe. I don't know. But it's the whole thing that they just needed a way to get him out of the bar. So that was a great way to do it. And also to make that, hangman scene and also even just the names like Iceman to Hangman,
Brilliant.
Goose to Rooster. Like we just go
and then
through.
Bob.
And Bob.
I was like, what? And you know who that is?
Yeah, that's Louis Pullman from El Royale.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did not know who he was back then, but you remember us talking about him and how obsessed I was about him because he has that incredible monologue. He's Bill Pullman's son.
Jeez.
And when you know it, you can see it. Well, it is fair. Whatever. He can act. And so, I mean, there's all this talk about the Nepo in Hollywood.
Oh,
and
that's
music
not
business.
what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's not what you meant, but whatever. If you have the quality and you have the ability, then isn't it all about who you know anyway in this world? So I'm not excusing it, but I do want to tell you a really quick, funny story. Bono's daughter, Eve, I think her name is, she's an actress and you've probably seen her. You just don't realize you have. She's very good, actually. And so when the whole Nepo baby thing came up, they were talking about Gwyneth Paltrow and all these people, she was like, hey, I'm like the daughter of one of the most famous people on the planet. How comes nobody's Nepo babying me? And she had this really funny take on it. And so I thought
she
it was
was
clever.
offended that she wasn't getting lumped in.
Exactly. She was like, you do realize Bono, the guy with the biggest head in the world, is my dad, right?
He's very beautiful.
She is beautiful. She looks
Yes.
a perfect combination of him and his wife. His wife is beautiful too, and they've been together since they were 18 years old.
Wow.
So she was like, yeah, she's been in quite a few things. If you ever get a chance, there was a show that she was in. I cannot remember the title right off the.
She was in Bridge of Spies.
Yeah.
Dang.
She talked about how coming from a famous family made it a little bit easier for her to be on that set because, you're surrounded by Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg and Mark Rylance putting in an Academy Award winning performance. And she's like, yeah, she's his daughter in that.
Yeah. I've seen her
Yeah.
in Bad Sisters, which is that's a good show. Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
just came out last year. So.
Anyway, so Bob, you know what's so great about his name is that it calls out the silliness of everything else about everybody else's names, because people who are not in that institution, I guess, the military, they don't understand how important things like that are, and they don't understand how call names are important. A call sign, yes, thank you. I was going to say number for a split second. They don't understand it. Coming from a military background, even though I wasn't in the military, it just is natural to my ear. It just is. It's just par for the course for the language that I grew up with. And so to actually say his name is Bob, it just makes it puts everything back on a human level. You're going to make fun of Goose. You're going to make fun of Rooster, Hangman. And of course it says H blank N-G blank. Yeah. So great.
And we're
great.
not going to leave talking about this scene without talking about David Bowie's Let's Dance in this scene, because if it's a good movie, it's going to have a David Bowie song in it.
It seems to be. It seems to be.
I was like, when I heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, it's fine. It doesn't have to be there, but it doesn't hurt anything. But I was just kind of like, wow, it's always there. But yeah, that's only the first 30 minutes in the movie. We haven't even gotten to the flying yet. And that is the part that there's the Mach 10 scene early in the movie. And then you have Ed Harris essentially playing the James Tolkien character from the beginning, who's like, I gotta do something. I gotta let you guys go to Top Gun. And Ed Harris has essentially the same scene, where he's like, you thought you were getting washed out. Well, now I gotta send you to Top Gun. But yeah, I mean all of the parallels all the way down. But then once we finally get to the flying, you can definitely tell a difference between the flying scenes in this movie and the flying scenes in Top Gun. And it's just one reason why waiting 30 years to make a sequel to Top Gun paid off, because they're able to get so much of this stuff in camera and get all of these actors to be on board for actually like pulling 6, 7, 8 Gs. I mean, it's just, it had to be a lot for them to deal with it. And I know they went through training and all that stuff. And they even had to be their own cameramen. They had to start and stop their recordings. And there was once, from watching the behind the scenes stuff, they never said who it was, but one of the actors did actually think that they started their recordings and did not. And so none of the whole flight got recorded. So you can imagine, number one, how expensive that was. And number two, how bad they must have felt. But still,
hold on.
Yeah.
Is that the actor's fault though?
Okay, you could say
there should have been 4 or 5 people surrounding him in his ear, her ear, whoever it was, saying, "Hey, this is the protocol. It needs to happen. This, and this. Did you the red button, the green button, the blue button, whatever? Did you press it? Is it ready? Is it go?" They didn't have.
You
to
could
start.
say that there should have been a fail-safe type system that had some sort of feedback that would allow them to verify that it was running or not. I mean, the thing is it's not like he was like, doing a FaceTime call to the people on the ground and sending the video. I mean, it's like high bit rate, super like high bitrate video that takes a lot of storage to handle, and it's 6 cameras in this plane. And they even had to completely redesign the cameras. They took a whole camera and they broke it in half, and they put the lens and imager part mounted so that you could see it, and then the other part, which is all the processing and all the computer chips and stuff, they put that underneath the seat, and then they had a cable going. Sony had to completely redesign their cameras just for this movie to make it work, to make everything fit in there. So, I mean, it's feats all the way down to make this happen, but it's one of those like once in a lifetime type things. Like, I don't know if the Navy's going to want to do this again. I don't know if it's, I mean, I don't know, but it definitely paid off, because you can really tell a difference in the lighting. You can tell a difference in how the actors' faces looked when they were pulling those Gs. I mean, it's just a completely different experience than somebody acting like somebody's, shaking the car that they're in, and they're like, "Ooh, we're driving." It's a totally different thing. So, I mean, that I think that was huge, and it made it. I mean, it didn't have to make it believable. It was happening. Like, they were in all of these shots. I mean, it was all practical. Now, they weren't flying the planes, but they were still in all of the shots. Like, all the stuff that was around them was all real. So that kind of stuff is just amazing. So, and they have planes that are like these like Cinejets that have these gimbal based cameras. They can fly just as fast as another fighter plane, and they can do all the same maneuvers as those fighter planes. Like, it's just, I mean, your sky's the limit as far as like what you want to see, no pun intended, on camera. So in the air. So,
no pun intended, all the way down. Because the first thing I said is Top Gun is top notch, pun intended.
Yeah.
Pun intended. Well, I think that's incredible, because we've talked about this before in the past, where an actor puts on his shoes and knows the character. Or we talked about Kate Hudson and how she knew how the character from Glass Onion walked, and that's how she was decided, or how the character developed from there. And so, can you imagine? You're not acting. There is no acting. There is only being, and no matter what they got, they're fighting against all these natural obstacles, and that, I think, is an actor's dream. How could you not? Sure, it's probably painstaking to continue to go up there and all of the G's and all that stuff that you already talked about, but the amazing feeling you must have afterwards, where you didn't have to be like, I'm acting, you just were like, oh my gosh,
There's
it's
so
really
much wind. Oh no.
It's right. Yeah. It's like the scene in Postcards from the Edge. You ever seen that with Meryl Streep?
I have not seen that movie.
Where she's on the side of the building, she's trying to act like she's hanging onto the side of the building, and she can't do it. And she's like, ugh. And then you realize she's laying on the building, and the camera's
and she's like pointing up,
and she's like, like she just can't get there. But so Tom Cruise just takes a suction cup and goes on the side of the building and solves that problem.
No big deal.
Yeah, no issues whatsoever.
Yeah. So
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like really moving forward, we really only have like a couple other scenes in the film. We have like him getting together with Jennifer Connelly, and then we have essentially like his scene with Val Kilmer, and then all the rest are fight scenes and stuff. So how did you feel about the Val Kilmer? I thought that would kind of get you maybe.
Well, hello. My thing about crying now is called Top Gun Maverick.
Yeah.
Whenever I cry, and I'm a crier, so I'm not that embarrassed. It just happens to me all the time. So I'm used to it. But when you're in a public area and you're having lunch with your brother and he tears up and then you tear up and you're like, Top Gun Maverick, Top Gun Maverick. Yeah, that scene is exquisitely acted by both of them. Once again, they leaned into, they did not pretend. They called out what is really happening and they put it on screen. And that, of course, you'd have to have an iron heart not to feel for Val Kilmer, first of all, and the bravery and the ability to get through it anyway, with his physical conditions and his health issues and stuff like that. So what do? You put it on screen. You make it part of the moment. And the look on Tom Cruise's face, it's Academy Award winning material. It's Academy Award winning acting. It just is. And I can't fight against any of the 5 that are nominated. I've seen all 4. I still have to see. Is it Bill Nighy, by the way? How do you say his name?
I just say Nighy.
Nighy, okay. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not fighting against any of them. I'm not saying Tom should have and they shouldn't have. I never do that anyway. But he has nothing to be ashamed of. He has nothing to be sad about. No, he did not get the nomination, but he puts in, it's probably one of his best performances of all time. That scene is incredibly well acted. It could have been cheesy and they could have milked it and they could have made it, but they didn't. They pulled back and they made it about a moment between 2 people who have a history. Because the characters have a history and the actors have a history, and the history of the actual people are on screen too. And some people might say that's a cheat or a little too meta, if you will. I don't. Whatever brings a person to have a cathartic experience in a movie is what brings them to have a cathartic experience. And I'm super glad I did not see this in the theater. Because it's embarrassing enough to cry as much as I do. Can you imagine crying at Top Gun like opening night with all the dudes there? It would have been so embarrassing. I wouldn't have cared less, to be honest with you, because I feel like that's a gift. But yeah, that scene it's powerful, and he has quite a few of those scenes in the movie. Yeah. There's quite a few scenes where Tom he goes above and beyond, pun intended.
Well, so I think the linchpin for that scene for me is the fact that like they establish he can't talk. You go in there, type it in, figure it out. This is how we're communicating, and then it gets to a certain point where it's like Iceman can't get through to him any other way other than to just verbally just like come out and say what he needs to say. And that's something that as an audience, we don't know he's capable of, and we don't know how that's going to affect him, but like he pushes through that. And then it impresses upon us as an audience and upon the character how important this is. So as
soon as you see him, it's like smack. And then the scene happens. You're like smack, smack. And then, then he speaks and the big gauntlet comes down, whack, and you're just done. And it's beautiful. And I'm so glad Val Kilmer was healthy enough to be able to produce that day, to be able to act that day. Yeah. I'm not saying that he's not. I don't know where he's at. But
it seems like he's doing a little bit better now because he did like a promo for Top Gun, for Alamo.
Yeah, I did see. Yeah, I heard about that. He was
like conversing and, it was a little bit better. But I mean.
But I just think that we're a better world for having that scene, as cheesy as that might sound and as hyperbolic as that might sound. Too bad. I don't care. But when Val Kilmer comes to the end of his story, we have that scene to remember him. And that's a beautiful thing. He could have another 30 years. I don't know where he's at.
Yeah.
I have no idea. I mean, who knows what he could do next? He could end up in a movie and win an Oscar. I have no idea where he's going next, but we have that scene. And also, it's an important scene for the movie above and beyond our personal connection to it via 30 years of Top Gun, or Val Kilmer's an actor, Tom Cruise is an actor, because it is the catalyst for what happens the rest of the film. He has a reaction to Val Kilmer's character that allows him to progress as a character on film or in this story. And that's important. So it's just, they gave it purpose. They just didn't throw it in there to pull our heartstrings. They gave it purpose. And the rest of the movie is fascinating, because I'm gonna move past it, because if I keep thinking about that scene, it's going to get me. The rest of the movie is interesting because how many times do they repeat what their plans are? How many times do they explain what the mission is? It's like 4 times.
Yeah.
And it might even be 5 times, because in the middle of the mission, they're explaining things that are going to happen. And then you're going to have to do this, and then you're going to have to, and I'm like, okay, so it's the Death Star. Okay. And it's the end of New Hope. Well, what other movie would you imitate at the end of Top Gun Maverick if it's not for the first Star Wars film? I mean, it makes perfect sense. And the visuals during that whole sequence of them learning about the mission and then during the mission are amazing. And then the reason why I bring up that it's repeated 4 times is, one, it never talks down to the audience. It keeps the audience engaged so you can remember what's supposed to be happening, but it never loses its at stakes level. When they're in the middle of the mission, you're like, oh, and some level, this has to succeed because you're watching a movie that has to succeed. But if you know the first movie, a lot of things don't go as to plan as you're expecting. And I thought, oh, are they going to go there? Are they going to goose rooster? What are they doing here? And I thought they were.
Or are they going to goose Tom Cruise? Are they going to goose Maverick?
No. I would have. I
don't think Tom Cruise would allow that as the producer of the movie. I think contractually he can't die in any of the movies that he's in, unless it's Edge of Tomorrow. But
contractually, and he does it over and over and
over again. Yeah.
Contractually, that works for my soul, because that would have been too much for me to handle. And also, it would have been a little eye rolling. I would have been like, really? Okay, we have a near perfect setup so far. It is rolling. It is going. It is everything that's come before that is really well done. Why would you go there? But they sort of do. And they allow you to think, even though you kind of know, no. And that's where the tonal misfire happens for me, is when he sees Rooster on the ground and they come running towards each other. There's something, it's a bit, I wouldn't say hokey, but it's just tonally weird to me. It's like the movie all of a sudden stops, and it's a forced stop, and then it dips down, and you're like, okay, what is this now? Is this a prisoner of war movie? What's happening here?
No, they have to get them in the same plane.
Absolutely,
that's the problem.
Absolutely, they do.
Yeah,
absolutely. But from that point on until they get into the plane, it's tonally a little wonky for me, just a little bit. And I don't know why, it just is. So anyway, tell me the line you're talking about.
Well, the line is it's right around that time. It's
of course
when,
it is.
Yeah, it's when Rooster says, "Talk to me, Dad," and it's like, no, don't talk to me, Dad. That's not your thing. That's his thing.
But okay, I forgive it because but this
there's no way he would even know that Tom Cruise that Maverick.
It doesn't
said
matter.
That.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
He's a little kid who's probably talked to his dead dad his whole entire life. It's probably like a thing.
The reason why that works.
You have no soul.
No.
You're
zero
heartless.
soul. The reason why that
Man.
works in the first movie is because, and you even hear the Monica Barbaro character, what's her name? Oh, I can't remember her call sign. But you hear her asked, talk to Bob, who's in her back seat, essentially. It's like, talk to me, Bob, where are we at with the laser? So that's a thing that, at least in these two movies, in Top Gun and Top Gun Maverick, that's a thing that the pilot says to the Rio, to the information guy behind them. It's like, talk to me, so-and-so, talk to me, Goose, talk to me, Bob. And then after Goose is gone, he's still saying that. He's still saying, talk to me, Goose. Not in the same way. He's saying, talk to me because I need your insight. I need your support. And I need you to tell me, what I need to do. I'm used to having you in the back telling me where to go, what to do. And I don't have that anymore. And that's an established thing for the Maverick character. And it makes sense on multiple levels in the first Top Gun, and it makes sense still in Top Gun Maverick. But Rooster never flew with his dad, so like it wasn't that kind of a relationship. So
how do you know? How do you know what he imagined in his bed at 5 years old age?
Well, fine. He
10
might
years
have
of age,
imagined
12,
that, but
12 years of age, 13, 14,
well,
15,
he was 5
16.
when his dad died.
But you can go, and that's a really hard thing for a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
The kid learned what forever meant.
Mm-hmm.
So why did he become a pilot to begin with?
I mean, I'm sure it had a lot to do with his dad, and it had a lot to do with, just all of it, trying to figure it out.
You're wrong.
Okay.
You're wrong. It's perfect.
Oh,
it is.
I think that I was wrong about it being because of his dad. But
no.
Yeah, okay.
No, it's perfect. Because it's funny that you said that, because that has to continue on. The stakes, I mean, just like him playing the piano in the bar, and them playing football instead of volleyball, and they're shirtless, and they're doing their Top Gun shirtless hot guy thing.
And Tom Cruise is still
God
wearing
for some
jeans?
things in this world. Yeah, so he looks great though. So leave him alone. But they're rolled up, so he's okay. People wear jeans with no shirt on the beach. What are you talking about?
I don't know.
I cannot believe that you're bagging on Top Gun Maverick more than I am.
Well, no, it's not. I just no. It was funny. It was a reference to the first movie where he wore jeans in the first movie in the volleyball scene, which is dumb. Like, why would you wear jeans playing volleyball? But either way, at least he's consistent.
Because you walk out from the bar where you're wearing just a shirt and jeans to play volleyball, and you roll up your. It happens all the time.
All right,
I'm from Virginia Beach.
Okay,
I know.
Okay,
it's perfect. You're wrong. Anyway, so we have to continue on some traditions, for lack of a better term, or some tropes, which Top Gun originally created. Sure. And so, yes, it's hokey on some levels, but it never pulled me out. It never pulled me out of it. I mean, the whole like spy on the behind the enemy lines, prisoner of war thing, where they're and then going up the mountain.
Around,
I mean, it's all that started to get like what, and then the plane,
and they have to be in an F-14, and
right. But what else could you have done? Why even make the movie again? Mm-hmm. Why even?
Yeah. So
unless you're going to do that.
So what did you think about Hangman's re-entry to the movie?
It had to be.
Yeah.
It had to. Listen, if you had told me a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when this movie was originally supposed to come out, whenever it was, that I was going to defend Top Gun Maverick to the nth degree, I would have laughed at you. And I would have told you, not you, anybody, second person. I would have said, you do not know me. If you think I'm going to defend this movie, there's no way. And I would have been a snob about it. I'd been like, ugh, whatever. But how could you not have Hangman enter at that moment? How could you not? Didn't you want it to happen?
Sure.
Didn't you need it to happen? And then it happens and you're like, yes. Yes.
It's the same thing as Iceman sticking with his wingman.
Absolutely it is.
Yeah.
Absolutely it is. But that's what a part 2 is.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's 2 years later, 4 years later, 10 years later, however long Avatar is, because really it's very similar to the first movie and this new movie of Avatar.
I still haven't seen it.
It's wonderful.
Okay, all right.
I loved it. Yeah, it's a movie going experience. It's the movie we saw the day after Christmas, and both my niece and I turned to each other and said, "Yeah, we should have saw that, not Babylon." Today was Babylon. Yesterday we should have saw Avatar on Christmas Day. Anyway, it's besides the point.
And Babylon's the Christmas hangover movie.
Whew, Lord. And that was before anything happened on Christmas morning. We went at like 10:45 a.m. Can you even imagine?
Yikes.
Can you, with a stomach full of popcorn and soda, because you have to on Christmas morning have soda and popcorn.
Well, you got the gluttony taken care of, so
right.
there you go.
The next day I was like, Avatar, can't eat popcorn. Ugh, Babylon. Babylon's got me down, man. Coming down, man. I'm coming down. But yeah, so how could he not? Because he needs his redeeming moment. And Glenn Powell is that guy, that actor who I was talking about in that baseball movie, that Richard Linklater.
Everybody wants
Everybody
some.
wants
That's the
some.
first time I saw him.
Remember, he's so charismatic
and he's in,
in that.
Hidden Figures.
He's in a ton of things.
Yeah.
He's been working nonstop for 20 years.
Oh, that's
As
cool.
a matter of fact, he's the actor that Kate Hudson, to wrap this around again, is talking to in that Actors on Actors show that she told Glenn Powell, and her brother Wyatt was also in Everybody Wants Some.
Oh yeah,
Her younger brother, which
Wyatt
I just
Russell,
now, which I just now realized that Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn named their kid after Wyatt Earp, which is.
That's all. I didn't put that together, but yeah, they totally.
I
did.
was just talking about it with a buddy of mine, and we go, "Wait a second, is that why he's named Wyatt?" I love both of them though. But anyway, she was Glenn Powell is the actor she was talking to when she said, "I knew how this character walked." Anyway, so I've been tracking him for a while now, and he tells a story in an interview about Tom Cruise. He was getting a little worried about being the jerk. That's not the word he used, but we'll go with that one. And he was kind of holding back. And Tom Cruise called him one night. Can you imagine getting a phone call from Tom Cruise? Acting advice from Tom Cruise? I'd listen to every damn syllable coming out of that man's mouth. And he said, you just have to go for it. You have to be full force in your face a-hole. You just do. You just have to do it, because it won't work if you don't. Your moment at the end will not work if you don't. And I think he balances it really well, because I actually think Val Kilmer's way more of a jerk for our PG, our G-rated audience than Hangman is. Something about Hangman being disappointed that he's not part of the original mission is, but then you know why. I mean, when he's not picked, you know why. Of course he's not picked. Of course Rooster is picked. Of course. Type. It types itself. But yeah, it was exciting and it was uplifting, and I probably would have shouted out in the movie theater if I saw it. And can you imagine seeing? Well, you do. You did see it in the theater with an audience. I can't imagine it. It must have been so much fun. It must have just been thrilling. And then you have the backstory about it being held for COVID and all the trouble they had getting it finished, and then it just was shelved
for a year and a half.
Can you imagine?
I can't imagine being some of those actors and just being
Glenn
like,
Powell
are
talks
you
about that.
kidding me?
That's what Glenn Powell said. He said, I've been doing this a long time, and it's not that I'm not grateful for what I have. I am. I'm grateful.
Yeah.
But I thought this was the one that, like, this is my interpretation of what he said, that this is the one that where when he walked into the room, he could say, oh, I'm the guy in Top Gun Maverick. And they go, oh, yeah, we loved you. You got the job. For 20 years, he's had to fight for everything.
Yeah.
And maybe, just a little bit, not easier, because it's never easy, but he was like, yeah. And then it got shelved, and then it got put back. And then we had this and we had that. And he's like, I don't think this movie's ever coming out. And I almost said Goldie Hawn. Kate Hudson said, yeah, but Tom Cruise always wins. And man, did he win big time on this. He goes, yeah.
He did.
It's almost like he wrote it to happen this way. And would you be surprised? I mean, so to wrap it up, if you can't tell by now, I love this movie. It just works on every level, and anybody who cannot find the joy in it, that's fine. That's your personal taste. I'm not judging you. I'm just saying, if you give yourself over to the movie you're watching, it is the best of its genre. It is superb for its genre. And I think we've mentioned this before, and I've told you this before. A friend of mine said He doesn't care how good or bad a movie is as long as it's good for its genre. So if it's a Western and it's good for its genre, then he's okay with it. So this way you can look at different things and not keep yourself out of a Batman movie because you're more interested in a mood, in the mood for love type of film. You can't, you're not looking for Little Women. You're looking for the Joker, you know, as long as it's good for its own genre, then it's good. And this is great for this genre. It is superb.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, yeah. And like, I'll just come back to it that it shouldn't have worked. It did work in spite of itself. And it's right up there with, like, Steph is sick of me asking, hey, can we watch Top Gun Maverick again? So that right there is just, that says a lot. But, and for me, it checks all the boxes, and I'm glad that it waited, that it got the popularity that it got. It was able to come out in theaters, and people were not as afraid to go out in the theaters to see it. I do have one last question for you. So how excited would you be if this movie got Best Picture?
Oh, I can't say enough. I couldn't say enough.
Because I think
Are you
that
kidding
it has
me?
a chance. Like, I don't know if it necessarily has, like,
physically fight somebody over it. No, I'm kidding.
The
I'm not a physical.
The crazy part is, like, the movie that's getting, like, the highest, whatever, like, the best odds is Everything Everywhere All at Once, which for me
is mind-boggling too.
I don't know why that's happening, but I would love it if that movie won, because it's my favorite movie of the year so far. So now I still have to catch up on certain things, but I mean, you know, that I would be happy if that happened. I would be happy if Top Gun Maverick happened. This hopefully, I don't know. They had to spend so much money, so much time, and make the situation perfect for this movie to come out, for it to be the success that it was. It makes it hard to imagine that there can be a bajillion more of these. Like, it just seems like everything is working on such a high level that. Whew.
Well, we can have a conversation when we're talking about the Oscars, because were we right about everything? Yes, we were. We were right all the way down the line. Jamie Lee.
Yep.
Stephanie, all of them. Stephanie Shu. My buddy was like, yeah, I had some problems with her character. And I was like, she's in. I'm telling you, she's in. And he was like, they're going to double nominate? I was like, yes, they are. And, you know, short round, here we go.
Yeah.
I mean, he is the front runner. And I think
it's such a great story,
it.
Though. Come on.
I think we said it. Or, I'm sorry. Did I mean we or
you?
Me? I think I did. I actually think I did. I have to re-listen to it, but I'm pretty sure. Anyway, the point to that is then I make fun at myself and with myself, but we were right. Anyway, when's the last time something this big, this kind of motion picture won Best Picture? It's been little films over the last couple of years.
Ben-Hur or something? Like
Moonlight? Well, I mean, Titanic.
Well, I guess, yeah, Titanic.
Or not Avatar, Hurt Locker won instead.
Yeah.
But there has not been a big, epic blockbuster that has been this good that's been nominated for the Oscar. So it's this year's going to be interesting, and we can talk about this later. And I'm sure we will. It's going to be interesting because of the history of last year, and now there's already a controversy that's ridiculous.
Andrew Westbro.
Please let's not do this at the end of the thing, because I can't
just remember that it's a bunch of actors and actresses.
I get it.
Just remember
I get it. I'm emotionally invested in everything I love. So I'm emotionally invested. Okay. Anyway, there's controversy from last year that we have never talked about because it's just not what we do here. There's controversy from this year. It is a political machine. It is a bunch of parts to a machine that is about an industry trying to make money. I am very resolved over what this thing is. That said, a movie like Top Gun Maverick being nominated brings in viewers and brings back the epic movie moments that we look forward to, because without movies like this, where are the montages coming from? I mean, what are they going to see? Frances McDormand walking down the thing with her little lantern? Is that going to be the montage moment in the? Yeah, I mean, not that I love that movie. Don't get me wrong.
But yeah,
I'm just saying,
hard ask to get somebody to be like, who is that? Oh, that's the lady from Fargo. What?
Right. But a lot of people have seen that movie because I've referenced that movie thinking nobody would know what I was talking about. And a lot of people have seen that movie. And a lot of people are seeing these small movies. I just mentioned Moonlight, and 5 people in the room were like, that's a brilliant movie. And I was like, and I took a visual of what type of people are in the room, the diversity of the people in the room. And I thought, well, that's not who I would think would have watched this movie. Anyway, the point is that big epic movies always bring in viewers to the Oscars. And when they're this great, they need to be celebrated. And the Oscars should, at the bottom line, be a celebration of film and how to do it as well as everybody involved in Maverick did it. It's near to impossible. The odds are completely against you. So if it won Best Picture, I would celebrate.
No, me
and
too.
I think that would bring me to a lot of bad conversations in the future because people would probably expect me to not be as
bullish,
celebratory. Well, no, I mean, no one's expecting that from me. I mean, it's pretty bullish. I am, but celebratory for such a big film when Banshees of Inisherin is there, which is a great movie. And I think that has as much chance of anything else to win because people love that movie. They love it.
That's an Oscar movie. Like, and we talked about it. Like that is an Oscar movie. Everything Everywhere All at Once is not necessarily an Oscar movie, but it is definitely like a niche movie. It definitely has like an angle that is attractive, I think, to viewers. But Top Gun Maverick is just a popcorn movie, and it does what it's supposed to do, and it does it well. So yeah.
If you were to list the things, and this is the last thing I'll say, if you were to list the things that made a movie great, entertaining, emotional, story, narrative, acting, what box don't you check? What box doesn't get checked? Yeah. The heart is in the right place. The soul is in the right place in this movie. So please, let's end the podcast so I don't sound like a complete freak about Top Gun Maverick because I loved it, dude.
Yeah, me too.
I loved it.
Me too, definitely. All right, you can check us out on the web at actorandengineer.com. You will find us on Facebook at facebook.com/actorandengineer. You can tweet us at actorengineer. And we're on YouTube. You can see our amazing faces on YouTube. And just search for the Actor and the Engineer podcast. And we'll see you next time.